community's future in your hands, Lord. We trust you. And in doing so, we know we'll find rest for our soul, divine intervention in all of our difficulties. We'll find strength to endure. To you, Father, who raised your Son, Jesus Christ, from the grave, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please join me in pledge allegiance to the American flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This evening, move on next agenda additions. Are there any agenda additions to consider? Hearing none, we'll move on to consent agenda. So the approval of the consent agenda is contains only the minutes from the September 3rd, 2024 City Council meeting.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Welch, second by Mr. David. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. Next item is the appropriations ordinance. So this encompasses the expenses from August 29th through September 10th. Expenditures amount to $894,650. Of the reported expenses, $329,196 are infrastructure costs for new developments, and those costs are paid through special assessments. Any questions concerning the appropriations ordinance?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. David.
make a motion to approve appropriations ordinance number 24-17.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. David, second by Mr. Dean. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. Move on to citizens' concerns, and I do not see any citizens here except Mr. Ropke. Do you want to speak to anything? Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. We'll move on to council member reports. Mr. Dean, let you go first tonight.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I appreciate it. I do have a few items. First, I wanted to mention that I participated in the WAMPO annual bike ped count over the weekend. I know several others in our community also helped with that on different days and times last week. So I wanted to thank all those that engaged in that process. It's an important piece of helping us partner with WAMPO, our community, in planning for future road, sidewalk, and walking bike paths. So appreciate that. Next is the next K254 Corridor Association meeting is actually this Friday. Bel Aire is hosting. So our meetings start at 11:30 here in the community room. Please join us if you're interested to get involved with the advocacy of this major highway route through our community. And then I just wanted to mention I attended National Night Out and thought it went really well, and really appreciate the Bel Aire PD for putting that on every year. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. David.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No report.
Mr. Schmidt.
I also attended the night out, and I thought it went well. So, and weather was great.
Yeah, it was. Thank you. Mr. Welch.
No report.
Ms. Hamburg.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report this evening.
Fast tonight. Okay, so move on to mayor's report. So last week I joined the Kansas Chamber of Commerce and the Wichita Chamber of Commerce for their annual Washington, D.C. fly-in. This is an important opportunity to visit with all 6 Kansas delegates in Washington, D.C. The CEO and CFO of Integra also joined in this trip. So it's hopeful that our showing of joint support for CHIPS funding for Integra will help these lawmakers provide needed influence to get the funding needed for Integra through the CHIPS Act. Let me change over here. Additionally, I was able to make many new contacts with Wichita metro area and throughout the state of Kansas. You never know when some of these contacts will be useful. On September 14th, I attended Senator County Association of Cities meeting hosted by the WSU Hugo Wall of Public Affairs, Hugo Wall School of Public Affairs. We learned about how communities becoming Purple Heart communities, and many are in the metro area. So I invited Zach Schumann to our next workshop to help us learn more about the process to achieve this recognition, to see if we're interested in that. I also learned about changes in the Hugo Wall School of Public Affairs with their new director, Dr. Stephanie Newbold. We were asked to consider funding for a person in a third-class city to attend the MPA program at Hugo Wall School. And lastly, we heard from Election Commissioner Laura Rainwater. Election office needs a few more workers for the November 5th elections. I was glad to see that Bel Aire citizens who stepped up to help with the primary election in August. Ms. Rainwater is working to expand the opportunity for people to vote with expanded locations and expanded early voting opportunities. So these expansions require more workers. So if you want to know more about this, contact the Sedgwick County Election Office at 316-660-7100, or you can apply online at sedgwickcounty.org/elections. And it appears 16 and 17-year-olds can work these elections as well. So that was a new interesting event to me. So a reminder this Friday, and Mr. Dean had already spoke about this, the Kansas K254 Corridor Association is meeting here at Bel Aire. So I do encourage all city council members to try to attend this meeting if they can. RSVPs are needed by noon tomorrow in order to there be enough lunch for everyone available. So you can RSVP by email to maycock@workforce-ks.com. And by the way, some may have seen an email that this meeting was canceled. That email was a mistake. The meeting is on. So on September 30th, from 9 a.m. to noon, there will be a second water consult at WSUQ's Metroplex. And these consults are being held to help KDHE develop a better water plan for the state of Kansas. As we know, the state is running out of water, and so this needs to be addressed so that we have the water we need for our health and safety. And on the drought emergency, citizens are encouraged to attend the Utility Advisory Committee meeting on Thursday, October 17th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. here at City Hall. And this was scheduled to accommodate those who, with work schedules, make it difficult to attend a 3 p.m. meeting. The UAC needs citizen input on how we should plan for drought emergencies and what steps need to be in place for each stage of emergencies. We had a water conservation plan in place, and it was overridden but only for a temporary time while the UAC considers improvements in the stages for the drought emergency. Your input is invaluable to help guide UAC for improvements. We know technology has changed over the years, and we certainly need to know and understand how certain rules affect citizens' act when a drought emergency is declared. We're currently in a stage 2 emergency, and there's risk we may move to a stage 3 emergency, but that may not be until next year. In the meantime, we are taking this opportunity to develop a plan that works for citizens of Bel Aire. So please plan to attend this meeting with your ideas. And please continue to pray for rain, especially for rain in the Cheney watershed. I'll now ask our city attorney for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of updates. The Utility Advisory Committee met on Wednesday, September 11th at 3 p.m. In addition to the committee, I was present. Also, our city manager and our code enforcement officer were present. One of the items discussed was the Bel Aire Water Conservation Plan. Unfortunately, there were no residents present that time. The committee is also reviewing any posts regarding this issue on Bel Aire's Facebook page. So if an individual cannot attend the meeting, if they would like to post something, a question or a concern, please know that the UAC is reviewing those as well. As of the meeting on September 11th, there had been no concerns or questions posted at that time. Our Bel Aire code enforcement officer did share that he continues to respond to any complaints. The primary complaint had been watering on an incorrect day, which many times just arose out of confusion. So he continues to educate residents, make them aware of the watering schedule, and answer any questions that anyone has. In general, he said that everyone that he's come in contact with, communicated with, has been generally cooperative. So that's helpful for him to also do his job and also get that information out there. Only warnings have been issued, no fines have been issued. But just as you said, Mr. Mayor, the next UAC meeting is on Thursday, October 17th at 6:30. The hope is that residents will come or send information with a committee member or post something. Anything would be helpful. I really appreciate the UAC committee because they looked at their schedule. They tried to coordinate their schedules to find an evening time to work for residents. The second thing I was going to mention at our next council meeting on October 1, Edward Watson, he's an attorney with Folston and Siefkin. He will be in attendance. The reason why is he's going to give an update to the governing body about the streetlights, Evergy settlement rate case, and what the next steps are for Bel Aire as a Safer Coalition member. But that's all. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Henry, the city manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're about ready to probably pass a special assessment round. We do this about every year, and I would like to review kind of the process from a 30,000 foot view, just for everyone's understanding before we send out a lot of notices to a lot of owners. How do you turn a green field into a development? That's pretty much what we're going to discuss tonight. First, you have engineers look at it and make sure that everything fits, as well as planning and zoning, all the platting process all the way through. Then you need to grade that ground so that water runs where you want it to run. That comes with a cost. Then you want to put water and sewer mains in to serve those houses. That comes at a cost as well. You want to put a street in. That comes at a cost as well. And maybe some sidewalks. So who will pay for that? Really, we have three options. Current taxpayers? No, we're not going to charge current taxpayers for that. Developers or in the improvement district that those improvements serve. So let's look at it from the developer side. A developer will buy the land, we'll break it into lots and sell each lot to a buyer. Let's say for this example that it's a $10,000 lot. If the developer takes on all those costs, that lot now becomes a $30,000 lot because he has to sell that lot with those costs included. So what happens to the future home buyer is he buys that lot with the house on it and it goes on his mortgage. And that mortgage is at about a 7% interest rate right now, 6.89 right now. So what the state of Kansas is, what is called the petition process. It's all laid out in state law, but it essentially works like this. The developer buys the lot or the land, developer sells the lot along with the house to the homeowner. And that's only $10,000 because the improvements are covered under the bonding authority of the city of Bel Aire. So that cost then is spread as what we call a special assessment on the tax form. And that is about 4% because we're using the city's bonding authority. So that's the real advantage to the future home buyer. There are pros and cons with everything we do. The pro, of course, is what I just said, 7%, 4% is a lot lower than 7%. Lowers carrying costs for developers. If you can imagine, that's kind of a big expense that would hamper growth. So this type of process, some would say, supports growth. Some of the cons, and there's not that many cons, there's really only two, but I tried to note some things we do to counteract the cons. Confusion for new home buyers and timing. Pending special assessments are noted in the closing documents. So if they do their research, they can call us and find out. Realtors are licensed, and this is why they're licensed. They should know about this and communicate that with the buyer that, hey, you might not see specials for a few years, but in this year, 2026, you're going to see specials of this amount, and the home buyer will be notified and aware. City finance staff, I can't tell you how many calls I have in 7 years received from developers and realtors and home buyers, and I'm able to tell them exactly what it's going to be or best estimates what we put in. And that's the third thing. Estimate needs to be updated and communicated. As you guys remember, we bring the drainage bids to you, and you'll see the engineering estimate and then the actual cost. Well, sometimes developers will take all the engineering estimates and divide them by the amount of lots and hand it out in flyers. Well, that might have been 2 years ago. So that's what I'm trying to work with, to keep those estimates up, to notify the homeowner. The difficult part on the city is we don't, it's not our land. We can't put a sign out there that says pending specials, contact City Hall. So really it has to be known by developers in the community, which I think it really is. It's just some of the phone calls I receive, it's people that say, I have no idea what a special is. That really frustrates me because the system kind of failed them. The risk part of the city, we cover that by a letter of credit that the developer has to put up. We're not just going to take on those types of expenses without some guarantees. It's a 35% letter of credit. So they do have some skin in the game in this. Phase development, I think that's the biggest thing I've learned in 2008. A lot of times these phases got into 50, 60 amount of phases. Now they're back down to 20, 30, the smaller phases, and build them out over time. That seems to be working since 2008. The one negative thing is the S&P rating, because we use the taxing authority for all these special assessments. They see that on our total debt load. So that kind of why we have a higher reserve and those types of things. So we don't get too hard dinged on S&P, but it is a factor. So that I wanted to list that. So that's a quick 30,000 foot view on what a special assessment is. You might have some residents here next month when we send these notices. I might come give the exact same presentation or a similar one if we need it, but I just want to get everybody a reminder before we go on to the action steps of tonight's meeting. I will remind you, curbside cleanup is October 5th. Have everything out before 6 a.m. Don't use your trash cart. And please review the city website or Facebook page for what you can and can't put outside the curb. I hope most citizens are well versed, but please call City Hall if you need it. Also, Fall Festival is October 19th from 10 a.m. to 2 at the Rec Center. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. By the way, at the Sedgwick County Association of Cities, I learned that our Fall Fest is one of the shortest in the area. Most of them last a couple days. So I don't know if we need to change that at all, but just interesting to know. All right, move on to ordinance, resolutions, and final actions. So as Mr. Henry is talking about the special assessments, so this year we have 29 projects supported by special assessments, and they have been completed and ready for permanent financing. As required, notices will be mailed, a public hearing scheduled, and formal adoption will be taking place over the next few weeks. These actions start the process. So Mr. Kevin Cowan with Gilmore and Bell is here to answer questions. Mr. Cowan. That's- Can you speak in the mic a little better? Yeah. Is that off?
Yeah, it was off. You referenced 29 projects. It was actually 31, but a couple of the sidewalk projects got combined with the street paving projects. So that was nice, actually, to reduce the number of projects a little bit. So as city manager said, this is the next step in the process. There are temporary notes that have been issued for all of these projects. The projects have been completed. The notes mature later this year. And this is the time we need to go through the assessment proceedings to allow the possibility of prepaid special assessments. And if those special assessments are not prepaid, those amounts get bonded by the city and lead to the final bond amount in a couple of months. So the action items tonight that are required by statute at this step in the process is to approve a statement of final cost. That's been included in your documents. That was a joint effort. Finance director produced all of those costs. Your financial advisor, Adam Pope with Columbia Capital, worked with those numbers and proceeded to have the final cost tables that you see in the documents finalized. Financial advisor then took those numbers and prepared a proposed assessment roll. And so that's the per lot assessments based on the original petitions and resolutions. How are these things being assessed? That's also part of what gets approved this evening. And the other things that happen is you call for a public hearing. That's required by statute, and you give notice of the public hearing so affected property owners can come to discuss the specials. I always mention this. The purpose of the public hearing is to discuss whether the assessments were calculated correctly. And as the city manager said, we may have a lot of people that show up. They may be surprised with the special assessments, even though the city does everything that it can. It records the documents, the resolution creating the benefit district. So there's access to all this information to estimate what the specials would be. And then there's also a state law that requires the seller of a lot to make an estimate of the special assessments. So there's quite a bit of information. Again, as the city manager Ted mentioned, sometimes maybe there's a lack of communication about what the estimate should be. Maybe they don't communicate with the city as well as they could to get an estimate of interest costs and things like that. But I do know the city and city staff does the best that it can to get that information to property owners. So again, if you flipped through the document, you'll see the final cost. One of the things we do is compare those final costs to the estimated costs that were in the original resolutions to make sure the final costs come within the bounds of those estimates. They do. And then, as I said, we work through the assessment rules to make sure the per lot assessments are as they should be. So the action item tonight is sort of one motion, second vote to approve the statements of final costs, to approve the proposed assessment rules, to call for the public hearing on October 1st, 2024 at 7 p.m., and to approve and authorize the giving of the notice of the hearing and the proposed assessments. As Ted mentioned, there will be a lot of activity this week mailing the notices. It's one thing to publish the notice, and it'll be a large notice, but each one of the individual lots will get something in the mail that shows what the assessment is. So there'll be hundreds of these going out this week. So property owners have notice of the proposed assessment and also that a public hearing will be held. So again, I know it's a lot. I'll stop there for any questions that you may have.
Statement and a question. I urge all of the people that receive these notices to verify they're correct, because in the past we did have one property owner that was on the list that was not supposed to be. And do we issue one bond for all of this, or do we issue a bond for each project?
One bond. State law does allow combining projects into a single bond issue. The advantage of that is just economies of scale. You don't have a lot of bond issues. The disadvantage is sometimes it's more difficult to track things when you look at all the phases and the additions that are combined into one project. There's no doubt it would be simpler to just say, well, it's going to be one bond issue for Chapel Landing, and it's going to be, $1.5 million, and we're going to do 7 different bond issues this year for the different additions and phases. But again, we try to achieve economies of scale. That's going to save money for the city and the property owners, and we do our very best to make sure the complexity of combining all of them is handled and it's accurate. And so, yeah, we do it as one. The single note issue from 2021 that was a large temporary note issue that had all of these projects in it, and that's the plan, to have one large bond issue.
So just to clarify, the hearing that we have on October 1st will only be for errors. They can't come in here and start debating whether the
Right.
numbers are right.
Or whether we
Unless
should have
it-
ever done this project. And
Yeah,
you get some
or
of
those
that.
kind of things.
And Councilmember Welch makes a good point. It was at a hearing that somebody said, I think they weren't in the city. I think it maybe originally
out
the
of the
petition
city.
had an unplatted property, but it was supposed to be brought into the city and it never was. So certainly that sort of thing we'd want to know about as well. I don't think we have that. These are all platted lots in the city this time, but yes, just errors, not discussion of should the projects have been done? Should they have been done this way? Could a asphalt street have been better than concrete, or whatever those things may
Yeah.
be?
That's all water under the bridge. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Dean.
I did have a quick question. So I noticed on some of them, they have cost of improvements, and then there's a few of them that specify benefit fees. Can you explain what that is,
Yeah.
just so people that are watching can understand
Yes, glad you mentioned that. So with some of the water mains and sewer mains that have been constructed really going in either direction, east and west, the city established a long time ago a process of imposing a benefit fee. So I'll use east of here as a good example because that's when it started. Large water main, large sewer main constructed, I think in connection even with some of the school construction, to sort of open up that area for development. I think one of the Rock Springs additions was part of that. They paid some special assessments for the sewer mains, a small part, but those and water mains, those were designed to serve a much broader area. And we have a state statute that allows the city to impose a benefit fee after the fact on property that wasn't originally assessed, but will now connect and benefit from the improvements. And so really good question. It's usually a fairly small amount because you think about the development that's gone east and west and the relative cost to each addition. It's not a huge number, but it does require them to pay their fair share of the sewer main and the water mains that were constructed. Last thing I'll mention is city at large bore a pretty large portion of the cost of the sewer and water mains, that they assessed part of the cost. Assessed part of the cost to USD 259, but I think they prepaid their special assessments in cash. And then Rock Springs, one of those first editions, had some specials, but the rest of it has been city at large. So the statute provides that if there's a city at large component, when you impose a benefit fee, it pays the city back. So again, that's what it is. It's, hey, we're 15 years later, 10 years later, this water main, sewer main benefits us. Others have been paying for it, including the city at large, and now it's time for us to pay for a share of that. One important fact is that will not become part of the bond issue. That's already been included in a bond issue, so we're not doubling up on anything. This is, city has been covering part of the costs of these things over a number of years, and the benefit fees will go directly to the city to reimburse for that cost over time. And the last thing is the benefit fees are assessed exactly the same way as the rest of the cost. So your sewer lateral line, maybe it's, equally per lot over 31 lots. The benefit fee will also be assessed equally per lot over 31 lots. So it just becomes a fairly small addition to what that assessment would be.
Any more questions for Mr. Cowan? Well, if somebody wants to do a lot of reading, there's a motion to be made.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate Mr. Henry and Mr. Cowan always going over this each time we do it. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to take the following actions. Number one, approve the statement of final cost, assessment roll certification, notice of public hearing, and form of notice of hearing and statement of cost proposed to be assessed, exhibits A, B, C, and D. Number two, establish October 1st, 2024 at 7 p.m. to meet for the purpose of hearing any and all written or oral objections to the respective assessment set forth therein. Number three, authorize the publication by the city clerk of Exhibit C, notice of public hearing in the official city newspaper not less than 10 days prior to such public meeting date. 4, mail Exhibit D, form of notice of hearing and statement of cost proposed to be assessed to each and all owners of property affected by such assessments at their last known post office address on the same date as the publication of Exhibit C. And 5, file each of said documents of record in the office of the city clerk and make the same available for public inspection.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Hamburg, a second by Mr. Welch.
Mr.
Any
Mayor,
other questions or discussion?
I know I made the motion, but I did have a quick question for Ms. Schrock. Nothing is being affected at this point with the charter ordinance that passed back in August. Will these be published in the paper? In the breeze, I should say.
These will still be published as we currently do, the Ark Valley News.
Ark Valley News, I meant to say.
Right.
Yeah.
When the resolution comes through next month, then things would change.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. Move on to item B. For many years, we've utilized CAPER's 457 plan administered by CAPER's, and the previous city manager opted for their own 401A plan outside of CAPER's with the ICMA. In the interest of streamlining the remittance process and complying with existing contracts, this motion would approve the 401A plan under Keepers. So mostly this just makes sure that we're doing this under Keepers, not
Yeah,
another
it
system.
probably could have gone on the consent agenda, but what this does is saves 10 minutes of work every other week. So I thought I'm after those little 10 minutes every time I can. And if it takes us one motion to do it, let's do it. But that's pretty much what this is before you.
And I did review his contract. This is in compliance with contract. So
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution and adoption agreement with Kansas Public Employees Retirement System 401A plan for the city manager and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
a motion by Mr. Welch, a second by Mr. Schmidt. Any other questions or discussions? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. The next item on the agenda is executive session. About how long do you think? 15 minutes? Or what?
Let's go 20.
You think 20?
At least
20.
All right, you guys make the motion.
maybe 30.
One of you will make the motion. I won't make the motion, but he's requested 20, so whatever you want to do.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. David.
a motion to recess into executive session to discuss with legal counsel and receive legal advice related to the Woodlawn roadway project. Discussion will be pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2 for legal consultation with Neil Gosh, which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship. Invite the city manager, city attorney, city engineer, and Catherine Klumsky. The meeting will be for a period of 20 minutes. The opening meeting will resume in city council chambers at 7:54.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Welch, a second by motion by Mr. David, a second by Mr. Welch. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries 5-0. We're in executive session for 20 minutes. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. We held an executive session. No binding action was taken. I understand we want to make a motion to extend.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to extend the executive session for 15 minutes, resuming at, what is that, 8:05?
8:05.
8:11.
Okay, motion by Mr. Wells.
Second.
No, second by Mr. David. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. Back for 15 minutes. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. We held an executive session and no binding action was taken. So ready to move on to item 13, discussion and future issues. Are there any issues we need to discuss about? Tonight or later. Okay. Hearing none, we'll go on to item 14, adjournment.
Mr. Mayor, I motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Welch, a second by Ms. Hamburg. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Too bad. They can stay here. The rest of us are leaving. That motion carries 5-0. Have a good night.